My lord pardons, I'm no serving man either. I have the honor to be a
Knight of the Seven Kingdoms video.
Knight
of the Seven Kingdoms video.
has fallen on sad days.
And Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is back with episode 2, and it does exactly what I was hoping it would. The first thing being to leave me really annoyed when the episode ends. I had the same reaction to episode 1, where you get all the way to Dunk and Egg camping at night, and then the stars are out, they share a quick, tender moments, and end credits. No, it was getting good, give me more, you know? This series is obviously very different to either Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. Yes, there are obviously disadvantages to that, but one advantage is you just get sucked into Dunk's life much more, I think. You kind of get to amble alongside him as he and Egg mill about for a day or two before they go to sleep, and if you're in the correct time zone, which I am not, and these episodes do end at like 10:30, 11 PM for you, that would probably be a good time to kind of go to sleep alongside them at the end of these episodes. I enjoy how immersive it is, basically, to just sit with the mundane for a bit, to just sit with their ordinary lives, especially in such a vast world as this one that we know can rip the ground up with something much larger and more epic. It's nice to just scale some of that down and sort of breathe. That's the first thing I like about this episode, and maybe it sounds like a criticism. I think, again, some people may be feeling critical in that way, will be saying nothing happened, that yeah, this is a bit mundane, that's the issue. And to that I say, plot-wise, not much happens. No, I suspect a lot more is going to happen plot-wise next episode, but either way, plot and story are two vastly different things. What I loved about this episode is how rich it is in character work. I think it is much smarter than it may seem on the surface. We are going to discuss that now. After I give you the disclaimer that I haven't read the book this is based on, I am very familiar with the A Song of Ice and Fire books, but I wanted to keep my reactions to this show more pure, I suppose, more judging it on its own merit, and then read the book afterwards, and maybe we can have a video discussing it then. But right now, I don't know too much about the future of Dunk and Egg, which kinda means there's no spoilers this video, I suppose. Let's begin with a cool train. So this episode basically begins with Dunk talking up Ser Arlan, how brilliant and faultless and honourable he was, whilst a lot of the memories we're seeing, Dunk isn't lying, but the memories we're seeing aren't like Ser Arlan's finest, but are instead a little half-cosy, half-melancholic snapshot of their last days together. We see Ser Arlan growing weaker and sicker before he rides off ahead of Dunk, and then we cut to Dunk now talking to the Tyrells. Ser Arlan is gone, and only has Dunk to speak of him now, but nobody will listen. So firstly, there's something very poignant about that. Even as you're trying to talk him up, it's the memories of these last days that pervade your mind. Even you who adore him aren't quite remembering him for his best, and if that's all that's then left of him, what was being a knight worth? I think it's also very useful in this to show us that all of Arlan's most glorious moments aren't ones Dunk ever saw, was only told about by Ser Arlan. Egg says in these moments Dunk is having to watch his master die over and over, every time someone fails to remember him. But you feel like it's also a little bit of Dunk's belief dying too. And for the first portion of this episode, yeah, Dunk thinks he's getting a bit of a break. All these lords might not remember him, but he sees the Targaryens arrive and he thinks, I can go one higher, you know, I'll go and speak to the manager. They'll be able to sort this out. They'll remember Ser Arlan. And on the way he meets Sir Donald of Duskendale, who makes it sound as though he grew up a poor nobody, the same as Dunk, which I really enjoy, casting himself in that sort of position where he wants to be able to look down on Roland Crakehall for his nobility, for his stuffiness, as though technically being a son of the Crabber who just happens to be massively wealthy, as though that makes him and Roland completely different. But to Dunk, and to us as an audience, they're both standing there in ridiculously fancy armour where Dunk looks like this. There is a big difference between these two, but not between them two. But nonetheless, it gives Dunk the impression he too could rise to that status. If Sir Donald did begin like me, I could become like Sir Donald, and then with some luck he does even meet someone who will vouch for him so that he can enter the tourney. Someone who does just happen to be the hand of the king, Baelor Targaryen, and who does genuinely remember Ser Arlan. I thought he was kind of tricking for a moment, but no, this is quite a sweet moment. And what I especially enjoy is Dunk's sincerity. For example, this line.
You gave him back his horse and armour and took no ransom. Ser Arlan often told me that you were the soul of chivalry and that one day the Seven Kingdoms would be safe in your hands.
And you see Maekor scoff, or is it Maekar? I can't remember which. You see him scoff like this is a blatant sycophantic flattery. And it does sound like it is, but I think Dunk is being genuine here. I think Ser Arlan did tell Dunk this, and Dunk, idealising all of the lords and ladies, let that image inflate in his mind, and it does then come out sounding very hyperbolic. The things Dunk has been told of this world of the Highborn, and how much he idealises, aren't necessarily the reality. It sounds like hyperbole, it sounds like flattery. The point is, we are, of course, still seeing Dunk idealise all of this. In episode 1, he was doing so heavily to the extent he spoke in a very rigid, formulated manner. All the kind of speech he imagines all knights are supposed to speak in, until slowly he was able to shed some of it and find a way to let some of his natural identity start to fit this knight image he has adopted. I talked about that in my last video, and actually, I think that's what's quite nice about the way he mostly just walks in on the hand of the king. He sees their banners, he says he has a plan, so even if he is very awkwardly outside their door for ages, he was planning to walk in and try to directly speak to them, which he would never have done an episode ago. He had to first try and ask other men who knew Sir Manfred before he could try speaking to him, and then basically book a fake appointment. Lionel Baratheon had to call him over before Dunk could bear to speak, and even then he was terrified doing so. But now this episode he's been walking up to all sorts of lords, all over the place, and even royalty. He's starting to feel a little bit more confident in this role, you know, a little bit more like he might be able to belong, might be able to be a knight, might have a place. So on the one hand there's that going on, but on the other hand he is still idealising all of this world, despite many of the signs. Roland's talking about shit, the way they all criticise whichever Targaryen he is. They call him temperamental. It's not Darragh, is it? Darrag's the other one, although they do also criticise Darragh. Maekor even talks of killing him. You know, despite the fact there are criticisms here as though these people are human and flawed, despite that, Dunk is still idealising their world, and the one time he does spot a disconnect between belief and reality, it's when Baelor says he broke 4 lances with Ser Arlan before unhorsing him, and Dunk says it was 7.
Tales grow in the telling, I know. Do not think ill of your old master, but it was 4 lances only, I fear.
But what's interesting is Baelor wasn't suggesting Dunk calling him a liar here, or taking any offence. He was suggesting Ser Arlan simply inflated the story over time, embellished it when telling Dunk. And Dunk, who doesn't want to draw that conclusion either, you know, he doesn't want to criticise Baelor as a liar, and he doesn't want to see Ser Arlan as a liar, instead insists, I must have made a mistake. I misunderstood or misheard. He did, after all, tell me I was stupid.
It was 4. I do apologise. The old man, Ser Arlan, he used to say that I was thick as a castle wall and slow as an oryx.
That's when this all kind of clicked for me. As much as this episode is about Dunk exploring what it means to be a knight, a lot of that is done via his grief around this father figure, via his memories of Arlan. The classic situation where after the death of an idol, you're then forced to discover there's a lot about them you never knew, or can never ask them about, or that may not have been true. This is kind of grief and identity being explored together at the same time. The great Ser Arlan of Pennytree is perhaps not so great as I imagined. What does that leave me feeling? That he was terrible? That knights are no good? Or else that I was wrong. I was too thick to understand, too lowly for me to be a true knight along the likes of him. Am I therefore making a mistake joining this tourney? Several times he calls himself a fool. In fact, he literally gets into debt with a blacksmith and sells one of the several horses he previously told us would be a foolish thing to sell, all on the slim chance of this tourney. And while also then discovering that Sir Donald only told him half of his story, he wasn't so much the son of a lowly crabber as he was the son of a crabbing tycoon. Was I then a fool to believe myself able to rise high? Am I an idiot for imagining you can ever reach that level without either being born into it or being massively wealthy? And then we get to the jousting, and Dunk has a panic attack realising he will have to compete in this. He is not like them. He can't, grab a shield from the floor while still riding and do all of this fancy trickery. He might even die tomorrow in the lists. That's sort of what the redhead's last episode warned him. Look after your body. Maybe this whole idea was foolish. Or was it? Dunk returns to camp with a surprisingly renewed motivation, and that's really interesting considering where this episode has been going, considering we see him becoming more and more desperate and sort of hopeless about his chances tomorrow. I've only talked about half the story so far, so let's discuss the rest.
My lords, I do apologise for my interruption. I have asked Sir Manfred Dondarrion to vouch for me, so that I might...
Have 51% off World Anvil? World Anvil! Yep, they are sponsoring this video. World Anvil is an online tool for game masters, for writers, for tabletop RPG players and world builders. An online tool for designing worlds, creating characters, chronicling history, planning and managing campaigns from a plethora of different games. My best friend uses it for our D&D campaign, I use it for planning my novel. Far better and easier than the scraps of random A4 paper stuffed into a drawer that used to constitute my creative process. Not only can I keep everything in one place where I can easily edit anything I want to, but I can create timelines, hyperlinks branching off to specific characters or articles, family trees, a billion other things. You can even link them all to maps, like here's this basic map I made years ago. If I click on the character Tess, it sends me straight to her page where everything is redacted, and that's like the most basic thing you can do with your maps. There's other creators whose world building looks so much nicer than mine. There's a whole community network on World Anvil if that's your thing. There's so many different cool features for everything you may possibly need. In general, there's been lots of great updates recently, making the interface even simpler and smoother than it already was. World Anvil is great. I am genuinely passionate, I hope you can hear that, and if you desire, if you crave, if you call to the heavens for a 51% discount, then use the code TREE, or click the link in the description or the pinned comment, and if you just want to try out the free version, then go for it. There's no time limit, test it out for as long as you want. World Anvil. So Florian and John Keel is an old tale I remember Sansa loving in A Clash of Kings. It comes up a lot when she and Sodontos are compared to Florian and John Keel. John Keel, like Sodontos, being a fool who was also a knight. Or was that... No, that's Florian, isn't it? Florian the Fool and John Keel the Fair Maiden. We see this play performed by Tanzel while Dunk and Egg watch on, and it is no accident that the puppet playing Florian looks a bit like Dunk. Dunk is being a fool to dream above his station, to bet his whole life on this tourney. This guy we haven't even seen fight, let alone joust. And as we say, he was trained by a guy who pretty much no one remembers, who was never a champion, and the only guy who does remember him suggests he wasn't as good as you think he was, Dunk. In the play, John Keel questions how can someone be a knight if they're also a fool, but Florian tells us,
all men are fools, and all men are knights. Where women are concerned.
And then when Dunk makes a bit of a fool in front of Tanzel, she quotes this.
All men are fools. All men are knights.
Interestingly leaving out the last bit, but are you flirting here, Tanzel? Possibly. Not quite so overt as slapping Dunk's ass, but I love how flustered it leaves Dunk for a second. I think it's also right to leave out that last line in relation to Dunk, because this isn't being a fool where women are concerned. I mean, it is to an extent, obviously, because of her, but not so much as concerning a man for Dunk, Ser Arlan himself. Not in romantic love, but in honouring him. The reason Dunk feels determined again to enter the list is precisely because no one remembers Arlan. Precisely because he seems to have amounted nothing greater in the wider world. And yes, that is partly because Dunk's idealisation was proved false. He admits it all at the end of this episode. He says great knights don't live in hedges and die by the side of a muddy road, the way Ser Arlan did. He says Ser Arlan wasn't a gifted fighter.
He drank, and he whored, and he was a hard man to know. He had no friends either.
Every classic idealised image, both of a knight and of a father figure you celebrate, is being stripped away here, which is so painful when this is the guy you have adored for years. However, as Dunk goes on, Ser Arlan was good to him.
He raised me to be an honourable man.
The point is, that alone should count for something. To be a good and honourable man, regardless of anything else about Ser Arlan, regardless of his lack of triumphs and glory and lack of friends even. If there is anything worth being remembered for, it is a good and honourable man. Dunk will enter the lists because that is what he wants to prove, how worthy of celebration it is to simply be good. And that's fun. Half this episode is Dunk looking more and more desperate about the idea of becoming a champion, winning some wealth, maybe earning employment, dreaming of a lottery ticket here, but at the end, that's not the focus now. It's not so much about what he can get out of it, as is the fact...
And I am his legacy.
The fact no one else remembers Ser Arlan as he truly was. Not even Baylor knows about Ser Arlan's character. The fact no one remembers him does not mean he isn't worthy of memory. It means Dunk needs to tell them who he was so that they do remember. Or at least show them who he was through the man he raised Dunk to be.
We will show them what his hand has wrought.
Such a great line. Not just because it shows us Dunk is really fighting for something more now, but also because in many ways this is kind of the best deed and glory anyone can hope for, to raise somebody well, to teach them well, to leave the younger generation that are coming into this world better off than the ones before them. Such a massive contrast to Michael talking about killing his son. This is true honour and virtue. And finally Dunk is starting to realise that all of these knights, with all of their glory, may not necessarily be pure and true. And in this complex world, maybe that does make you a fool to chase after those ideals. There is still a fool's hope of Dunk in this tourney. However, that not need taint the entire ideal. Foolish or not, goodness is still something he can fight for. You can marry the fool alongside the knight and be both one in the same. Wonderful episode. Do I have anything else to say? Yes, just this. Egg is playing back at camp, but he then gets self-conscious.
Splendid riding tonight. The part with the fish was disgusting.
When we earlier saw you cheering it on, Egg, you were enjoying that immensely. Don't pretend otherwise. This made me realise something I discussed last video. I said about episode 1 that Dunk was playing at being a knight because he wasn't ever knighted. He's not truly one. He is playing, however, playing doesn't necessarily mean deception or acting or something entirely false. It's more emulating something you aspire to be and seeing if it can fit. And I compared that to Egg, who was playing on Dunk's horse in his armour, also playing at being a knight, until Dunk interrupted. But this episode's Egg is playing at camp, something or other to do with the Blackfire Rebellion, which feels like a fitting hint. And this is great because the play is honest. The play is true and sincere. And this is Egg. This is the young, energetic, bubbly kid. When he stops playing, when he starts talking here, this is the falsity. This is when he's kind of lying and masking himself. Just thematically, how cool a touch is that? When playing at something becomes more true than not playing. Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I'm really looking forward to see Dunk fight next time. Comment your thoughts, good or bad. Leave a spoiler warning if your comment is going to say something about the future that I don't know because I've not read the books. Although I've got a feeling half the comments are just going to be about Ser Arlan's penis, aren't they? Like the video if you liked it, subscribe. If you want updates about all my new videos, then join my Patreon, even just as a free member, without paying anything at all. That will notify you way better than YouTube ever does about my new videos. Or become a paid member if you want all the extra benefits and access to the Discord, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Flying Spider, Luke Core, Michael Gallagher, Ben Marie, Thafy, Chad Bramwell and Joshua C. Follier. Thank you.